in the final video of this series, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take again, the information that we learned from graphing and show it to you in a slightly different way that you didn't see in class. So we're actually going to go back away from this stuff, alright, and we're going to go back here towards when we were using with force of gravity, and we're going to look at what happens to the graph between R and f of g. I actually don't need all of this right now, so I'm just going to get rid of it. You can get rid of it, or no, there it goes. Now, I'm going to create a graph. So first thing I do, I hit insert, I go to scatter, and then I click the one that doesn't have the lines on it already. And very nicely Excel has figured out that I don't need it to tell me what I need of a graph. I'm actually going to make the R my independent variable here, or my X, to see what happens to force of gravity as we get further and further away. So if I select data, I don't have anything, so I add. I again click the X, I come over here to my R's, and I select all of these. I get rid of the 1, and now I select my Y's are going to be my force of gravity. And I hit OK. And OK again. And now you can kind of see it creates a hyperbolic function. So, similar to before, I get rid of my my legend there. The next thing I'm going to do is don't forget to add the chart title and the axis. Alright, now I'm going to add those titles in there. Okay, and now you can kind of see my data. I've got my chart on here. One thing I did want to show you here is that you'll notice that the FG is not subscripted. So you can actually highlight that, and similar to before, you can click font now, because you're not changing the cell, you can change the font so that that's a subscript. Alright. Now I did want to show you one other thing with graphs. This particular information is a little bit more confusing to see since it's over on the right side. So let's say I want to move where I'm graphing from. Well, it's actually not that hard to do. All I'm going to do is double click on the data down here, and over on the side I'm giving a whole bunch of options. Now you'll notice that the minimum, the maximum, the major unit, and the minor unit, those are all auto right now, so Excel is taking care of those. But let's say for the minimum option I wanted it to be well, let's put it at the radius of Earth. Let's start right there, because we know it's not going to be anything below that. So I'm going to change it to fixed, and I'm going to change it to 6.37 e to the 6th. And that's where we started, so it kind of makes sense that it falls over here. And the final thing is to make sure I have a trend line, so I'm going to right click, hit add trend line, and let's see which one fits. And I'll notice that power fits really nicely again, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to hit equation and r squared. And there we are. I have 3e to the 16th, x to the negative 2nd, and r squared is equal to 1. And there's my graph done very nicely. Alright, so what does this tell me? Well, I can see that it's actually not a hyperbole. It's actually an x to the negative 2nd function. So from this equation, what that tells me is how to linearize my graph. So it says whatever's in x, which is my r, needs to be taken to the negative 2nd power. So I'm going to come over here and make a column. I'm going to put r caret to the negative 2nd, and in parentheses I put my units, m to the negative 2nd. And this is kind of not the best way of showing this. So let's show you this. Let's actually let's get rid of the caret here. Let's highlight the negative 2, format cells. Instead of superscript, instead of subscript, we'll go superscript, so it'll go up. And that looks a little bit nicer. So let's get rid of the caret here as well. Alright. And format and superscript. That looks a little bit nicer. And now again, I'm going to hit equals to tell it that I'm going to do a calculation. I'm going to tell it that I want to take the r value, and I'm going to take the caret, and I'm going to put this in parentheses here. I think the negative 2 will be fine, but just to make sure, parentheses, negative 2. And it gives me quite a small number. and I'm going to continually pull that down. And those are very, very small numbers. So now, again, similar, whenever you linearize, it's actually just very easy to just copy and paste rather than start from scratch. And then I can change these things ever so slightly. So I'm going to put a -2 here, and then just like I did over in that column, I'm going to use this superscript to make those look a little bit nicer. Okay, so font and superscript. Alright, and then I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to go -2, highlight, font, superscript. Actually, I'm going to copy here, so I'm going to Control-C, and then put that over there, so that does the same thing again. Now, again, like we said before, all I need to do is change the data on this one, because I've got my graphs all changed. You can see how linearization is a whole lot nicer with Excel. It goes really, really fast. So I click the data, I click the chart, go up to design, click select data, and then where it says series, again, I want to edit that. My Y values stay the same, my X change, and so I just highlight, instead of using my R values, I'm going to use my R to the -2nd. Now you might notice that nothing's on here right now. And you might say, what happened? Well, if you remember earlier, I changed where I was looking at, which is actually affecting this right now, so I'm going to have to get rid of that. So I'm going to double click here again and go from fixed back to auto. Hey, and there we are, we're back to a line. And my last step is, rather than this being the power function, since it is a line, I'm going to click on the double click the trend line here, change it from power back to linear. Now you can see what the K value is and what the B value are. If you remember back in when we discussed this in chapter 1, we discussed how to figure out what your K value should be and what your B value should be just by able to look at the equation from the very beginning. You're going to want to go back and review that. We do have videos from chapter 1 that I'll post the link to below if you have forgotten that recently.